Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Friday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing well out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day, a great ending to your week, beginning to your weekend out there. Here to bring you the latest information that we have on multiple things in this morning's video. The first half of the video, we'll go into discussing the tropics. We'll give you a little information on Debby. We're going to speak on the impacts from Debby for the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, and the Northeast timestamp in this video. So that'll be today's forecast portion of the video in that Northeast timestamp. So we're not going to totally just not speak about Debby anymore because the system is still going to bring widespread impacts today. Flooding, a tornado risk is ongoing right now across the Mid-Atlantic. So we're not going to leave you hanging there. We got you covered. But this will be the last day that we'll see impacts from Debby. Today will pretty much be the last day. There'll be a little bit of energy left tomorrow morning, but we're pretty much going to be done with Debby after today. So most of our focus on the update on the tropics is going to go on this tropical wave. And we're going to talk about what's going on with the system right now, what's the percent of it developing in the next 7 days. And we're going to speak on all the scenarios from the model guidance that we have from overnight into this morning, talk about the environment background that is going to most likely support this to strengthen at some point. We just got to figure out how strong, where. We're not going to speak much on steering currents, but we will talk about it. But not going to, break it down in great detail right now. We're just not at that point. We need this to actually develop and see how quick it does develop. But we'll speak heavily on this. We'll give you a lot of good information. And then, of course, I do got you covered as far as what's going to happen weather-wise across the entire lower 48 for your Friday. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put those in the comments below so I can do that, and so others have an opportunity to do so too. So let's get rocking and rolling this morning. I hope you're feeling well. It is Friday. I imagine most of us are. I know I am. So let's get going here. So tropical wave right here, the leftovers of Debby up here. So let's draw on this a little bit. This is the Atlantic Basin, the MDR, the main development region. It's an acronym that stands for that. I think I said that right, MDR. Tropical Atlantic is out here. Okay, this area of the Atlantic typically starts to get active in the later portion of August into early September, but it's already been active for about a month now. Of course, we had the lull 3 to 4 weeks where nothing really happened after Beryl, and then we had Debby. But things are starting to get pretty active out here in the tropical Atlantic now. And then there's Debby. Doesn't look like much of anything now, just a big blob of green, orange, and red, which tells us there's some deep convection still firing around and just east of the center of Debby. And we're continuing to get a lot of moisture on the southern end as we're getting a jet streak behind, under Debby, I would say, to the south through the eastern section of the Carolinas, where we have had life-threatening flooding in the low country of South Carolina. It has been wild. 7 to 10 inches of rain has fell just outside of Charleston into the Myrtle Beach area, and it continues to fall this morning. So this has caught a lot of people by surprise, including me. I mentioned the storms on the southern end of Debby, but I did not think they would dump 10 inches of rain. I mean, I'll totally admit that. So I hope you guys are okay down there in the coastal regions of especially South Carolina this morning. It's been pretty wild. But Debby is heading on off. Will continue to bring widespread impacts to the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast today. But like I said, today is the last day. All eyes are on this system now. This is our tropical wave. No, it's not an invest or anything. It might get dubbed an invest sometime today, maybe tomorrow, sometime in the next several hours. This is a changing situation as I would say model guidance and our, I would say, thoughts on this really developing continue to grow in confidence, I would say. So tropical wave right here. We're going to continue to watch this over the weekend as it moves in this general direction. So this is what we're watching, and it looks pretty convectively active this morning, I would say, popping off a lot of shower and storm activity. You see these areas in reds and blacks. This indicates colder cloud tops, which tells us we have some taller updrafts that are getting taller up in the atmosphere, which is indicated. Remember the higher up you get in the atmosphere, the colder it gets. So this is indicated by the reds and the blacks that you're seeing. Colder cloud tops are here. So definitely a healthy, juiced up tropical wave this morning in the MDR. So we continue to move forward. If we look at the National Hurricane Center graphic here, post-tropical cyclone Debby, pretty much just a depression at this point. We're not going to show you the cone of uncertainty or anything like that. There's no point in showing you all that. I mean, this thing is post-tropical now. It's just pretty much a low pressure cruising over the eastern U.S. bringing impact. So not going to show you any kind of cone with that, but I do want to show you what the center of Debby is, what's left over of Debby. It's pretty much moving kind of along the West Virginia border, and will continue to move off to the northeast and eventually dissipate up in Canada and the North Atlantic. So this is really what we're watching here. All right, this is where the wave is, right where this X, pretty much right where you see that convective activity right here. Okay, so this is where our tropical wave is located. It's expected to potentially develop in this orange area here. We're now up to a 50% chance for this tropical wave to develop once it gets into this orange outline area with the lines going in between it. So sometime, in kind of the southwestern Atlantic, somewhere in the southwestern Atlantic areas of the Caribbean, it has a potential to develop. Now, I will say another update will come out in about 7:30, 8 o'clock Eastern time. This could potentially bump up to a 50 to a 60% chance to develop in the next 7 days. But as of now, 50%. I wouldn't be surprised if by the time we get to this evening, this is showing up in red. It means if it goes from a 60 to a 70% chance, this orange will go from orange to red. So as of now, just a 50% chance to develop in the next 7 days. And if we take a closer look at this wave, and I'm not going to stay on this long because I know I spent some time just a second ago on showing you this wave, but this is the Central Atlantic. This is the Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico right here. So the wave is still way over here. All right, and this is kind of the central to western side of this tropical wave. And what we're going to do here is watch as this kind of moves in this general direction. But we don't expect this to develop really anywhere in here. I really don't. So, and it's pretty much going to take throughout the weekend to cruise through this area. I think it'll be most likely somewhere in this area by Monday morning. It's Friday morning right now, so it's going to take a few days to get into this area. And I think this, where I just drew the second circle, I think that's where it will have a chance to really get going, because I really think the environment background really becomes supportive. The upper wind pattern, record warm sea surface temperatures in this area, it's going to get going in this area. So I just want to show you a closer look at what's going on with this and how close it is as of right now to like the Lesser Antilles, the Leeward Islands, and all that. Okay, let's get this back off, keep rolling. Now let's go over model guides, and we are just going to initialize this for Monday morning, not going to start it for this weekend. I don't expect this to develop over the weekend, so we're going to start this for August 12th, Monday morning. Okay, 12Z stands for the morning time or whatever day I'm showing you guys. That's Zulu time. Not going to get into that. I'll just try to, out loud speak timestamps for you guys to help you guys out. So here it is right here. So, I mean, it's already getting close. I mean, by early to midway next week, this thing's already staring down somebody. It's just, is it going to hit anybody? So Monday morning, here it comes. We'll take this to Tuesday morning. Latest GFS that just ran this morning, the latest information that we have, has this as a tropical storm moving into like the Leeward Islands, the Lesser Antilles, somewhere in this area. Okay, not way down here, but somewhere up here. We'll start, getting more detailed on which island it looks like it could potentially hit if it hits anybody here in the next day or two, over into the weekend. Okay, so we keep this going. We get into Wednesday morning. This makes landfall as a strong tropical storm, a low-end Category 1 hurricane into Puerto Rico next Wednesday morning. And then we continue to move this forward, and then we get into Thursday morning, August the 15th, 6 days from now. This is a Category 1, maybe low-end Category 2 hurricane as it's affecting the Turks and Caicos Islands at this point. If you live in that area, anywhere from the Leeward Islands, Puerto Rico, to the Turks and Caicos, you guys need to pay attention to this, because a lot of model guides likes this, what would be Ernesto, our next named storm, which I think we'll be saying a lot over the next several days, maybe the next 7 to 14 days. Really getting, I would say, before we start saying it to death, I think it'll get dubbed sometime early next week. Okay, I think if I had to make a prediction, that's what mine would be as far as a named storm. But here it comes, Thursday morning, affecting you guys. We're starting to get into Friday morning. This is still, it looks like a compact hurricane to me. Most model guides show this, not a very large hurricane. That could change. We don't know that for sure. But we get about a week from right now. This is a Category 2 hurricane, just, I would say, just north of the Turks and Caicos Islands and just east of the Bahamas. But look, it's starting to turn north, and we're getting to Friday morning, getting a little too close for comfort here in the Bahamas. And 975 millibar low. I mean, at this point, guys, we're like 8 days out, so we're pretty far out. It's getting a little too close now. Sunday morning, 966 millibar low. We're getting close to Category 3 status. And if we take it all the way out to about 10 days out, this thing is getting awfully close to the North Carolina coastline. Now, this is not a forecast. And in fact, it scrapes it enough to actually, bring impacts. And I know a lot of people in the Northeast are probably screaming at me like, Mitch, you got to show the rest of this run. But just remember, 252 hours out. We're over 10 days out. But it does get very close to the mid-Atlantic Northeast coastline. And this is absolutely a storm we need to watch out for the Atlantic Canada area, like Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, New Brunswick, etc. Definitely a storm we need to watch out for you guys. Now, let's take a look at the European model. Now, same thing. We're going to start off where we left off with the GFS. All right, so Monday morning, this is still a very weak tropical wave. Well, it's a strong tropical wave, but it's not a depression or a named storm at this point based off the Euro. So Monday morning, August the 12th. It's right here, if you don't know where it is. We keep this going. We get into Tuesday morning. It's kind of going over the same areas as the GFS says it's going to go over. But it's a weaker system. It's like still a wave or depression at this point, maybe a weak tropical storm. Still pretty weak as we get into Wednesday morning. And it's just bringing a lot of tropical activity to Puerto Rico, areas of Hispaniola, the Dominican Republic. And then we get into Thursday morning, August the 15th, 6 days from now. Now we have a full-fledged developing tropical system, 1,001 millibar low. That would be Tropical Storm Ernesto at this point. I don't expect any other system to take that name. I really think this will take that E-name. And same thing, affecting potentially the Turks, Caicos Islands. And, you get into Friday morning, 1 week from today, and we have a system that's beginning to turn north, which is good. We just got to watch out for our friends in Bermuda. 989 millibar low. That's a strong tropical storm, maybe a low-end Category 1 hurricane. And this thing's already starting to head north-northeast. 978 millibar low. This gets awfully close, makes a close pass to the west of Bermuda at this point. We're getting into like next Saturday evening, 8 days from now. It's a major hurricane just west of Bermuda, but not even close. All it would do is bring big swells to the Carolina coastline, mid-Atlantic coastline, not even close enough at all to like bring any major impacts. But if you do switch this and you look at the eastern U.S., you would think, okay, this thing's heading on out to sea, but watch what it does. High pressure builds over it. I've kind of looked at the steering current patterns, the upper level patterns here, and all of a sudden, guys, like next Sunday evening, this thing looks like it's actually heading right towards, maybe Maine and Atlantic Canada. And it's just a lot of scenarios we have to watch. The entire eastern U.S. will be watching this like a hawk. It kind of reminds me, in the very early stages at least, from just observing this, is Hurricane Lee last year. Remember when we were talking about that? Ended up bringing a lot of impacts to Atlantic Canada. But, there was a lot of people that were worried that was going to end up impacting the U.S. It turned into a very powerful, at one point, Category 5 hurricane. But luckily, it didn't end up impacting the U.S., but it did bring widespread impacts to Canada. Now, if you look at the latest ICON model, same thing. It's starting off Monday morning. And this is kind of in between the Euro and the GFS as far as strength. Develops it a little quicker than the Euro, but not as quick as the GFS. And it has it a little bit further south. For example, it sneaks this into the Caribbean as we're getting into like next Tuesday night, like August 14th into the 15th. Well, I would say August 13th to the 14th. And as a tropical storm just south of Puerto Rico. Now, if you go back and you look at the overnight ICON model run, all right, it's a little bit further north, makes a landfall into the Dominican Republic, and then it gets it north of Hispaniola. Once again, like most models are showing, starts to affect, the southwest Bahamas and the Turks, Caicos, the southeast Bahamas. Sorry, get my directions mixed up. Turks and Caicos areas. And then as we're getting about a week out from today is it's a strengthening hurricane just east of the Bahamas. And kind of takes the route that it looks like the GFS is taking. So that's the latest model guides we have. Canadian shows a storm too. They all do. Now, if we look at the European Ensemble guidance, and this is starting off for next Monday, midday. Remember, this makes up 51 members, takes all the members that it does develop, the ensemble mean, basically an average, puts all the members on the screen here for us. So it gives us a really good idea and really shows us what the spread is with all these low pressures. So as we keep this going, the European ensemble does get members into the Caribbean, but it takes a lot of members, affects the Northern Lesser Antilles, gets them into the Greater Antilles, impacts Puerto Rico. A lot of these members have this going right into Puerto Rico, but hopefully if it does hit Puerto Rico, it doesn't have time to rapidly strengthen before. But a lot of these members begin to strengthen, and then they begin to turn north, and a bulk of the strongest members do start to head north and eventually even northeast. But then you got some stragglers that go right through the Bahamas. Some of them are very strong, some of them not so much, but a lot of them at least a hurricane right through the Bahamas. And then look how they're turning north. And if we kind of bend it back up here, some of those members do exactly what the operational Euro does. And instead of just fully hooking and going back out to sea, yeah, I mean, none of them hit the eastern U.S., but because this only goes out 10 days. Remember, it doesn't go out any further than this. But you got some members right into here looking like they're getting awfully close to areas in the northeast. And you got to watch out everybody in Atlantic Canada. And then we got some stragglers back here that's getting very close to the southeast coastline. So, I mean, the entire eastern U.S. needs to watch out. Does the Gulf need to watch out? Absolutely. You guys know that. I shouldn't even have to tell you. But anywhere from the Gulf of Mexico coastline, the Gulf Coast, I mean, Florida, all the way up the eastern U.S., eastern seaboard, everybody needs to pay attention to this because it's a changing situation. We'll start to talk about steering currents and stuff like that a little bit more when we can have this to fully develop. And that's when we'll start drawing the arrows on your screen again, just like we did with Beryl, just like we did with Debby. We'll start to really educate you guys on why it's steering one way or the other. But we're just a little too far out to talk about that in great detail, but we will. So as far as sea surface temperatures, one thing I do want you guys to note here is the Gulf of Mexico continues to be unbothered. And I know this is kind of off topic when we're talking about this wave that might not even get into the Gulf of Mexico. But the longer that the Gulf of Mexico continues to be unbothered, the worse it's going to be when something eventually, I think, in my opinion, inevitably does get into the Gulf of Mexico. So your sea surface temperatures are climbing, widespread in the upper 80s now to around 90 degrees. I know this is in Celsius, so 30, 31 degrees Celsius. That's in the upper 80s in Fahrenheit, close to 90 degrees. So you got, just a bathtub in the Gulf of Mexico. Look here, bordering like the coastline of Alabama, Mississippi, and New Orleans. It looks like it's into the low 90s, well into the low 90s. Now you got this pocket of cooler waters off the coast of the Carolinas. It's going to take a while for this to heat back up. Not too long, probably a week or so. But this is because of all the cloud cover and the stationary storm with Debby. This has really cooled the waters in this area, even cooled the eastern Gulf of Mexico a little bit. But going back to where this system that we're talking about could track, it could kind of track in the same area as Debby did, except Debby wasn't as strong. Could go kind of right through this area potentially. And you got sea surface temperatures 29, even some cases 30 degrees Celsius. So, it's well into the mid to upper 80s in these areas. So sea surface temperatures are above average in this area. So this is going to go over an area sea surface temperature wise that supports tropical development. If you look at temperatures compared to average in these yellows and orange shade, these warmer looking colors, this is where your sea surface temperatures are above average. Of course, there's the colder waters off the coast of the Carolinas because of Debby that sat off the coast for a couple days and really just churned up the water and cooled the waters down. But in these areas where potentially future Ernesto will go through, you got sea surface temperatures that are about 1 to 2 degrees above average in Celsius. So the waters are very warm, guys. We already pretty much know that. Now, what about the upper wind pattern? This is what's worrisome to me because, of course, where this system is going to strengthen, it strengthens over those very warm waters, right? But here comes our system on the latest GFS, indicated by the L that you see on your screen. I want to tell you already right here, you have one heck of an upper wind pattern. You have divergence aloft. You have an outflow. This thing is ventilating very well. And, we'll try to get you a better example of this right here. there is literally a no shear environment. All tropical systems deal with a little bit of shear, but very low shear. So if you're wondering what we're looking at here, these are winds about 200 millibars, 40,000 feet up in the air. So way above the actual low level and mid level circulation of this system. So why are we looking at this? Well, we're looking at this to try to figure out what kind of shear. There's a couple ways to try to find shear in the atmosphere. If you notice in these slashes of blue, these are winds going at about 20, 30, maybe 40 knots in some cases. I'm much stronger up here with this trough digging down at this time that it says it'll be digging down up here. So you got 80, 90 knot winds up here, so very strong. But if you notice, I want to mention this, and I always am going to re-go over it a million times. Systems in the northern hemisphere, lower pressure in the northern hemisphere spin cyclonically. So, of course, the flow around this tropical system is doing just like this, right? Spinning just like that. Now, if you look at these little lines with arrows embedded in them, these are streamlines. So this is where the air movement in the upper levels of the atmosphere, that 35 to 40,000 feet I just mentioned. So if you notice, above this storm, because 35, 40,000 feet is above this storm, air is being dispersed outward. So it's flowing out here. It's way over here. If you look really closely, there's arrows over here. There's air being pushed out over here. So, over here. So there's basically air being pushed away from the storm, whether it's just getting pushed directly away from the storm, anticyclonically, like in this case. So this actually helps for more air to rise in the middle of the storm. That air gets dispersed outward as it rises up in the upper levels of the atmosphere, where you have just air getting pushed out away from the storm. That allows for more air to rise, and that gets pushed out. So it's like a constant ventilation system for the system. It's ventilating very well, and we know that when we constantly allow for air to continuously rise in these tropical systems, rising air means that you can have shower and storm development. Of course, a tropical system wants the moisture. It's, if it's developing a lot of storm activity, then it's obviously thriving very well. It's very healthy. Sinking air does the opposite, which is typically what you have associated with dry air, a lot of sinking air. That will not be the case with this system in the Southwest Atlantic, which is right in this area where the system is, around mid to late next week. Okay, so it has right now what looks like in this stage of the game, midway late next work week, a wonderful and excellent upper wind pattern that supports at least moderate strengthening. And ultimately, that is why, if you back this up a little bit, that is why the system goes from a 989 and then it begins to deepen into a 978, and it's kind of maintaining. In this case, it would seem like it would strengthen more than this, but that is why. And even right here begins to strengthen. It's a 960. So that's why this certainly just gradually strengthens in the entire Southwest Atlantic. That number either stays about the same or just gradually drops. And the more that millibar drops, look right here. There's nothing bothering this system. Air getting pushed outward right here. It's definitely would be a scary setup. Air is getting pushed and dispersed outward from the system. The system might deal with a little bit of southerly shear right in here that might prevent it from rapidly intensifying. But we're speaking a bunch of ifs at this point. See how the air is getting kind of pushed to the low pressure right here. You can barely see it. Look at the arrow. It's very, very subtle here. That could actually create a little southerly shear. But this is a bunch of just what ifs at this point because we're 210 hours out, right? We can speak on all those little micro features until the cows come home. But at the end of the day, we're speaking on a lot of details that are just way too far out. And you can watch as basically this tropical system develops because of that no shear, low shear environment, I would say. This allows for, like I said, just rising air, a lot of shower and storm development. So this thing develops a very compact moisture bubble, creates an excellent moist environment. And of course, if you have a moist, tight core that's basically rotating cyclonically around the actual center of low pressure, then dry air can't get entrained and mixed into the actual circulation. Therefore, this will continue to thrive. It'll continue to develop and get stronger, and that's why you have a nasty looking hurricane off the coast of the southeast next weekend. Okay, is that going to actually be the case? We don't know. So we got to continue to figure this one out. That's all I got on the tropics. Now, let's speak on what's going to happen weather-wise across the low of 48 today. Of course, this is the remnants of what's left over of Debby. I mean, look at all these flash flood warnings that I just mentioned at the beginning of the video down here in the eastern sections of the Carolinas. And I mentioned the low country, but this is more so portions of the low country this morning, but more so areas of like the coastal regions of Charleston and even getting into southeast North Carolina. We continue to get this jet streak kind of flowing behind the actual low of Debby, but a lot of rain up here in PA, a soaking rain into New York State, a lot of rain all the way up into areas of Ontario and southern Quebec this morning, and definitely a real washout to start your Friday morning for these areas. And then we have a little bit of action kind of riding on the northern portion of this ridge right here. Some storm activity in the panhandle of Florida, a little bit of, there I said, I haven't done that in a while. The panhandle of Texas, forgive me, my folks in Texas. Panhandle of Texas, I do that sometimes to get my panhandles mixed up. But, you know, I'm picking on you guys for not knowing the states you guys live in, and I'm over here calling Texas the panhandle of Florida. So shame on me. And you guys know I wasn't picking on you in the video, what was it, last night or the night before. But anyways, we got some rain up here in southwestern Nebraska, some rain here kind of just dwindling around out here in the Four Corners region. So that's what's going on right now. Watches, warnings, and advisories. Some heat will be flexing up here in the Pacific Northwest. Even some red flag warnings. We're starting to get pretty dry. It is dry. Flood watches are up in the green areas here in New Mexico, the panhandle of Texas, and Oklahoma. Heat advisories in the orange. They're not as widespread as what we've seen over the last few days, so that's good. Flood watches continue. Tornado watches are up in the areas of yellow. We got the flash flood warnings in the areas of burgundy. Flood watches are up for, you know, the rainfall that will eventually hit that flash flooding status in certain areas today. In areas of New England and the Mid-Atlantic, we even got some wind advisories up. So that's what's going on as far as that. The excessive rainfall outlook, we do have a slight risk across areas of Colorado, New Mexico, and the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas. We have a 15% risk of flash flood guidance being exceeded, so rain could definitely add up out here. And then we have that moderate risk and the slight risk including around it. So in this, if you live in this red area, and this is really happening right now, you will continue throughout the day to have that 40% chance of flash flood guidance being exceeded within 25 miles of the given location. So take the flooding threat serious today. Also, we got to get through today. Once we get to tomorrow, things begin to clear out. The severe weather threat today, we do have a marginal risk down here like south of Dallas into Waco and Austin and kind of north of San Antonio. We do have a marginal risk here in Amarillo to just north of Lubbock all the way into eastern sections of New Mexico. But the big risk of storms today, of course, is going to be up here in the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, where we do have a slight risk that includes some higher populated regions. I mean, Albany, Binghamton, Scranton, New York City, Philadelphia, down to Baltimore, slight risk. And this is really driven off tornadoes and winds. So in that, you know, if you live in that brown area, that's where we have a 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in any given location. The green is a 2% risk of a tornado. So New York City, Baltimore, 5% risk of a tornado today. And then the wind threat, 15% risk of winds exceeding that 55 to 60 miles per hour. So the Southeast today, most of everybody is quiet. The only concern I have, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a concern in Florida, just, you know, afternoon showers and storms, and, you know, same for southeastern Georgia. But the concern I have for the eastern sections of the Carolinas that have been flooded this morning is more storms are going to develop for the far eastern counties of the Carolinas, especially North Carolina. So you see these storms developing right in here. This is concerning because we don't need any more rain. We need to start to clean up. But once these storms clear out this morning in this area, please don't let your guard down. We're probably going to have another round of storms this afternoon to this evening. And we could get some storms that'll fire in the upstate of South Carolina today, maybe the Piedmont, North Carolina. So watch out for that. And then we'll continue just to get a solid flow, west to east flow throughout Florida. They'll just bring you scattered showers and storms. Everybody else kind of west and north of this area, not much to speak on today. But here's a closer look at the Carolinas. Look at those storms developing right into there in the eastern North Carolina. This is going to cause even more concerns because your ground is saturated. It's been very rainy. So more storms are going to develop. For example, this is around 5 to 6, 7 p.m. Storms firing as far west as like I mean, maybe Florence. Storms, I mean, the precipitation values are very high in this area, which means the atmosphere is going to unload water when there is a storm that develops. So just please be mindful of these storms this afternoon to this evening. And then watch out those storms here in the upstate of South Carolina kind of late tonight. Could be some thunder boomers out there. But rainfall between now and the next 24 hours, there's an additional maybe 1 to 3 inches of rain in eastern North Carolina all the way up to southeastern sections of Virginia, also getting into the Delmarva. So maybe another inch of rain could fall. Moncks Corner is an area I'm hearing that got like 10 inches of rain this morning. So there's been water rescues. It definitely caught some people by surprise. It caught me by surprise. I know I've mentioned it a couple times, but I'll be honest, I did not expect that at all. But up here in the Northeast, I mean, just the washout continues. The brunt of the heaviest and widespread rains will continue to surge out of PA and really just soak New York State today. Eventually, some gusty showers and storms will move up into Vermont, New Hampshire, into the Berkshires, Western Mass. Storms will move all the way through the Mid-Atlantic, New York City, Long Island. The actual low will actually deepen as it gets kind of enhanced by a jet streak from this trough up here. But of course, it's not a tropical system going through Quebec or anything like that. This happens a lot. It's definitely non-tropical at this point. But we'll continue to get these gusty winds throughout New England and Northeast. And I think by the time waking up tomorrow morning, guys, I mean, maybe some leftover storms, showers, and Southeast Mass. But, we're about done with it. That's it. That's all she wrote. Say goodbye to Debby. But a closer look at the tornado threat today. There is an ongoing tornado threat right now. But these storms will continue to tail whip through this area, and then more will try to develop later on this afternoon, and there could be a tornado threat with these storms too. Scranton, Allentown, you guys down to the Delmarva, Dover, the Tidewater, even potentially, but I would say this is going to be positioned a little bit further north. These bands right here that eventually make their way into New Jersey, New York City, there's going to be embedded spin-ups in this kind of last little tail-whipping area of storms. And we could get some more that develops behind this, but latest model guidance says, one round and we're done. Hopefully that is the case. And then this sweeps through. So, if you do look at the significant tornado parameter for today and how these storms kind of get going, and it spikes again this morning, but I mean, really, as we're getting into about middle of the afternoon, guys, once we get into like this evening, I think that the environment no longer really supports kinematically tornadoes much anymore. I think it's because the low-level jet gets displaced to your north, and then I really think it's this morning into this afternoon in this area. So please be aware in that time frame. But of course, don't rule it out this evening either. Now, rainfall between now and the next, I'm going to go all the way out to Sunday morning just to be safe here. A soaking rain for New York State, Vermont, New Hampshire, a good quick hitting inch to inch and a half of rain. This will happen fast, could cause some flash flooding. We know northern Vermont and New Hampshire have been hit hard by flooding rains. Luckily, this will move in and out fast. Hopefully, you guys will be all right. Won't have any crazy stuff go on as far as that. But, also some gusty winds, guys. You cannot rule that out at all. So some strong winds, especially in Vermont, New Hampshire, and areas of Maine, these higher elevations, the Adirondacks. You guys are going to get some pretty strong winds that are going to develop throughout the next 24 hours. So please be prepared for this. Gusty winds, saturated soils could bring down some trees. And some strong winds are possible, in New Jersey, the Long Island, the southern Connecticut. I mean, even up the valley region of New York. And gusty 30 to 40 mile per hour winds occasionally are possible, even up into the bays areas of Maine and stuff like that. So the south central U.S., we're going to watch a big complex of storms that develops and moves through southeastern Colorado into the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas and areas of northeastern New Mexico. This is getting into late this afternoon into this evening. These will blast through. These could pack a punch. They might issue a slight risk for this area. So if you live up here in the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas, be aware of these. Don't let these catch you by surprise. And then the leftovers of this energy will continue to kind of straddle the Oklahoma-Texas border. And we're waking up tomorrow morning from maybe Oklahoma City down to like Childress, Texas, to some unsettled weather and maybe some more storms kind of streaming down here into the panhandle of Texas here. So be aware of this. Some damaging winds are possible. Might get a bump up another category. in severe weather here. So definitely be aware of these storms today. Now, I do want to look at the north central U.S. Start off by telling you guys how jealous I am of your temperatures. But of course, we're starting to get closer to mid-August now. I mean, I would say up here, even though I've never been up here, but just kind of asking around, asking people up here. I got a lot of people that I work with that are from this area of the country, actually. I got a buddy that I work with every single day right beside me that, he grew up in Lower Michigan. And forgot the town name, but somewhere just west of Detroit. But then I got my branch manager. He was born in Rockford, Illinois. So and then I got another buddy who's from Massachusetts that works here. So a lot of people from the north like to tell me about the weather. I'm always love listening to their stories, and how they did things growing up with the snow and colder weather. But certainly we're starting to get some of these summer back-breaking cold fronts up here, we like to call it, where basically you get a cold front that sweeps in and, it pretty much breaks the back of summer. We're starting to get these up here. Cold fronts are starting to dig down a little bit more frequently. So you're waking up to very pleasant conditions up here. Nothing bone-chilling cold or anything. But I will say, if you go over to the north central U.S., a little bit further west here, I mean, we're getting some 30s showing up here in the Dakotas. A chilly morning in the Dakotas. Definitely a chilly morning for the kids waiting at the bus stop. But nothing you guys can't handle. But certainly a sign that, seasons are starting to, we're definitely full-fledged in summer still, especially up here in the south. But there's a sign that just, we're starting to make the transition. And I've grown to appreciate August. I used to hate August because I felt like it just dragged on. But I love August now because I know what's to come next, and it excites the heck out of me. So I got the fall candles lit in my house. In fact, this is one of my favorites right here. I like going to TJ Maxx. I don't know if it's going to show up with that maple pecan. I ain't going to lie, for a dude, I am really into candles. I am really into decorating for the holidays, and a really, really seasonal type person. That's funny. I posted a picture on Twitter yesterday, and I said, what did I say? I said, instead of storm chasing, I went up to TJ Maxx and pretty much storm chased candles instead. And a lot of dudes are like, man, they're being funny. Like, man, we're going to take your man card away. But I'm just into that kind of stuff. I'm into setting a mood. I would say I'm into it more than my wife is. Typically, I would say that's more of a, don't want to offend anybody, but that's more of a woman thing, a female thing. But I'm just into that kind of stuff. I don't know. Anyways, enough of all that. But the north central U.S., as far as weather falling from the sky, I mean, could be kind of like a fall-like day up here. Just some kind of rain showers drifting through those somewhat cooler temperatures through, Minnesota, the UP of Michigan, northern Wisconsin. This energy will kind of drift through with the actual cyclone up to your north. So just a nice spin up here that you got going on. Nice cyclonic spin, bringing those rain showers over Lake Superior down to the UP of Michigan. So, outside of that, guys, there ain't a whole lot of weather actually happening. But you look at the western U.S. out here, we're going to get widespread shower and storm activity from Nevada, Utah, a little bit up into Wyoming, Idaho, Colorado. We'll see widespread storm and shower activity, and a little bit more sporadic in nature in Arizona. And certainly if you live in northern to northeastern New Mexico, a higher chance of storm activity. And then this will kind of, drift on through. Not a ton of rain from this. I know I haven't really been speaking much on my folks out west lately. But certainly just a nice flow around this ridge. It's kind of bulged up from the south. So temperatures today, there's that kind of fall dreary-like day up here. I love days like that most of the time. But northern Wisconsin, the UP and Michigan, temperatures might be trapped in the 50s up here. But it's a far cry from what's happening down here to the south. Temperatures in the 90s. Not as hot as it's been, though. And we'll notice that the heat will be back in like South Carolina, North Carolina will climb well into the upper 80s again. So, the heat's definitely not went away just because we had a tropical system. But like I said, starting to see signs that we're having some, changing of the seasons. But as you guys know in the South, it takes a while for us. It takes a much longer time. But pleasant conditions across the Ohio Valley, the Northeast. And if we look out west, the northern plains are nice. Pocket of cooler air with some cloud covering some rain in areas in Nebraska where temperatures might not get out the 50s. You get kind of west of the Rockies, and then we got some warmer air, but nothing too bad out here at all. So, Guys, that's all I got. Thank y'all for tuning in. I might not get a video out this evening. Might just take a little bit of a break unless something drastic changes on model guidance. But we definitely I've read some comments like, Mitch, pace yourself. You're correct. You're absolutely correct. I definitely need to pace myself and just, conserve a little bit of energy for the more busier times that's out in front of us. But, things change so much. I'm always eager to jump on here and get you guys an update. But, definitely might take this evening just to kind of relax. But like I said, follow me on Facebook, follow me on X, Twitter, whatever they call it. If you're not big on social media, I totally get it, guys. Totally get it. But it's a great way to follow along and get up-to-the-date information for sure. So God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful Friday and start to your weekend, and I'll talk to you again soon.